Hey crew, I wanted to make a quick video. It's been a busy week, couple weeks since I've been back from visiting you. We had a nice drive back. It was easy and quick. So the week after I got back, I had, this last week, let's just say this last week, I had my first aid certification, not first aid, CPR certification training on Tuesday. And then I had the wilderness first aid certification over the weekend. So it's kind of strange. I haven't done training like that in a long time. And so actually doing the CPR, I got in there and I didn't think too much about it, but then you get in there and it's a different, it's a different kind of a learning environment. I haven't been in one like that before, where you're, and actually I was worried about getting the procedures correct and everything and understanding what's going on. And I really actually enjoyed the CPR. I found it pretty easy and it made sense to me and that was good. But then the wilderness first aid training was kind of fascinating because it's got a really extensive set of protocols for a scene assessment. And so, it was 16 hours of instruction, and the first 4 hours were just doing the assessment. And realistically, what I realized is that for the wilderness first aid WFA certification that I got, really the only thing you're really qualified to do is size up the scene and make a decision on kind of how you're going to get out of there. So you're deciding basically, are you going to evacuate the patient? And there's a series of little things that you can do. You can make a splint. You can treat abrasions and that cuts and lacerations and that sort of thing. But really, it's about doing an assessment and figuring out what's going on and trying to do sort of a systematic assessment so that you can talk to people who are really trained medical professionals and give them an idea of what needs to be done. But the interesting thing about that was that, that actually I've got a thing over here. This little pyramid, the top half of that, basically from here on up is that assessment essentially. And there's a whole series of steps there. And then, after that, you just basically make a list of problems and interventions, and then you monitor what's going on. So, those steps are really important, but it's pretty complicated. There's a lot of little stuff in there. And, there's always really specific things you're looking for, and it's easy to miss any little thing. And so one of the frustrating things for me was that over the course of the entire 2 days, I never was able to get through that entire assessment phase correctly. And part of that was because, the first 4 hours, you just focus on that and you try to go through little bits of it over and over again. And then they start throwing scenarios at you. And so they do these, scenarios where they have a victim who goes and you have to go approach the victim and then you try to go through this scenario. But because there are so many possible things that can happen, they just start throwing complicating factors in right away. And actually their approach was to throw in complicating factors that you hadn't been exposed to yet in the curriculum, so that you come across somebody and they're dealing with an issue that we haven't talked about yet. So it may be what's a good one? It may be heat stroke, and we haven't covered heat stroke yet. We just covered spinal injury. So you come across somebody and they're on the ground and you're thinking spinal injury and it's heat stroke and they're just passed out or something. That didn't happen, but it's that type of thing. And so, or then they switch it up. So, initially a lot of the assessment is asking questions and trying to get information, and then they make you deal with somebody who's unconscious, and then they make you deal with someone who's unconscious in a weird position, and you're not supposed to, and you got to think about, is it a spinal injury, do I move them, do I not, and you can't get that information. And so it makes it, and I realize that the reason they do that is because they're trying to prepare you, because if you're in the field, realistically, you're never going to come across something, or you're unlikely to come across something that's really clear cut, and you're going to be flustered. But to me, the idea is, the thought is that if I could have gone through the assessment just in a very straightforward way a few times, and at least get it right once, that it would improve the probability I'm going to do it right later. And I guess maybe what I should be doing is I should practice it. I really should practice it. I'll go through it with Sarah or something, just so that I have it. I've at least done it correctly all the way through one time. But then again, I'm no longer have an instructor there to look at me, and I may be missing things and I may not know. So anyway, it was a little bit frustrating in that sense. At the same time, it probably gave me what I need. And the nice thing is I'm going to be with Jen when we're in Iceland. And she's an EMT, and I suspect that she's, having hung out with her, that she's very good at these sort of procedural things, like memorizing what steps we go through in the right way and the wrong way and all this stuff. When I tend to be more of a Gestalt guy, where I'm like, and actually this was one of the things that bothered me about this process, is that the scenarios that we ended up in were not very realistic in a way, because I tend to want to think big picture and say, like, I'm more likely to want to talk to a person and talk through stuff than just start an exam. But they want you to do the exam because it's how it works, that's what you're practicing. You need to know how to do the exam, which I understand. But I found it frustrating because I my first thought is to have more conversation and make it a more collaborative process with the victim, and you can't really do that when the victim is testing you, right? So they're trying to, in some ways, they're trying to deceive you. So yeah, I found it kind of frustrating, but I feel a little bit more prepared, but I also feel a little nervous about the whole thing. Which is probably a good place to be. Anyway, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. And actually, the WUFA training was in this place called Vernonia Springs, and it was this guy and his partner kind of built this place out of whole cloth. They bought the property and they've put in a straw bale building, a huge building that's just gorgeous, with a lodge and polished concrete floor and a big wood stove, and very comfortable, and then really nice outbuildings, a big pavilion and a pond they've got there, and nice restrooms and showers. It's actually a really nice space. So we enjoyed hanging out there. Sarah and Taryn actually went out to Astoria on Saturday and went over to OMSI and hung out with Bryn on Sunday. So they had a good time as well. So it was great. So the other interesting thing we've done this week is I got a new camera that I'm filming this on, and I got a Sony RX100 Mark V, I think is what it's called. And so it's a point and shoot, but it was pretty expensive. It's kind of the high-end point and shoot, and it's tiny. And I'm doing all the video on it, and basically we're replacing the video camera we've been using since 2011. So we got 6 years use out of that camera, and the problem with that camera was the view screen that was damaged, and so it had black lines going through it. So it was hard to frame up shots. It was tough to see things outside. This camera actually has a viewfinder, a pop-up viewfinder that you can look right into, so that in bright light you can actually frame your shots up, which was always a pain with that other camera. It also will take better photographs, and actually it doesn't have as long of an optical zoom, but it takes higher quality images and everything all the way around. So And also, actually, it's got the ability, like if I'm talking to the camera like this, I can see it's got a monitor, which the other camera did as well, but this is nicer. It's a little more robust, and I suspect it's going to be harder to damage. The other one I beat up pretty badly, you know, taking it on backpack trips. We'll see how this one goes. Anyway, I'm pretty excited about it, so I'm testing it out here, making this video, and we'll see how it goes. One of the downsides is it doesn't have an external audio jack, so I tried to put little wind noise dampeners over the two microphones on this, but we'll see how that works out. Anyway, that's what I've been up to. I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a great birthday. I'm glad to hear Beth's back, and I will talk to you when I talk to you.